Everything is working. Um, Thank you very much for coming today for this very exciting topic, blockchain in gaming. So a little bit about myself. So I'm from Switzerland, and I'm the founder of the studio Everdreamsoft. We do games, start with Genesis. We integrate blockchain in the game, and I'm also advisor for different blockchain gaming projects. So one interesting thing, when I came here in India, I got a new experience. I took a tuk-tuk, actually, and at some point, the tuk-tuk took the road on the reverse side. And for me, coming from Switzerland, I was afraid and shocked, like how someone can go on the opposite side on the road when there is a lot of traffic. But probably for most of people here, that's a common and a normal thing. So going on the contrary side is a little bit what we did when we started the game on blockchain, because we needed to do something that is different, something that is against the traffic, because there is so much games right now. So today we need to innovate, to bring something new in the industry. So first, I want to ask a question. Who knows about blockchain? Raise your hand. Okay, and who from you own cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ether? Okay, a few of you. So, first of all, I'll have a small presentation, small explanation without going into detail of what is blockchain, what problem blockchain solves. I'll have a short QA, very short QA after this part, and then I'll show you how we do it in gaming. So what problem does blockchain solve? So before going to that, let's go a little bit into history. So back in the past, before the invention of writing, people were living in small villages, and the property, I mean, what people own, lands, houses, were a common sense known by every other people. So if I want to make a transaction with someone, I go on the center of the village, I tell to everyone, I have this land and now I am selling this land to that person, and everyone records in his mind that I don't own this house anymore, and the second person owns it. So if the day after I want to sell the same land that I already sold, people in the village, they will say, no, that's not yours anymore because you've sold it yesterday. So with the invention of writing, we could live in a bigger city. Why we could live in a bigger city? Because all the property, all this record, were stored somewhere on a book, on a record, on a ledger. And it is today still the work of the banks. They keep records of things. So when we think about payment, a cash payment, so when I exchange a currency with someone, we exchange property. So it means that I have a banknote in one hand, a seller has something in his hand as well, like let's say I want to buy a movie CD. So I go to the shop, I hand the bill, he hands me the CD, and we actually exchange property. The bill was mine, now it's his, and the CD was his, now it's mine. So this is how we exchange with cash. It's basically an exchange of property. If we look at how we pay on internet we cannot hand a property of ourselves and give it directly to the merchant. So we need to have a mean of payment like a credit card. So a credit card, there is a third party in a transaction which is the bank, and the third party will guarantee the shop owner that he will receive his money eventually. But it's not a direct transfer, but basically I identify myself to the shop owner, I connect to the bank identifies me and say, okay, we accept this payment, and we know that guy, he probably has the money, and we guarantee that you will get paid and we will take the money from that guy. So there is a third party, and this third party will, of course, take some fees on these transactions. And when it's international payment, it's really complicated interbank payments, so it's very heavy and it's very slow, and it's expensive. So if we take the comparison between digital goods and physical good, so physical good is very simple with cash. As we said, there is a property someone has, and there is an exchange between two people of two physical items. In the digital world, you cannot do it because, for example, if you have a digital copy of a movie or something, you cannot say that movie is unique. So if I want to transfer the movie or something of value over internet, it cannot have value because you never know if I duplicate it 1,000 times. So if we look at the banknotes, each banknote has a serial number and is unique. So when I hand over my banknote, I'm actually losing it to someone else. So we cannot have a digital banknote on internet because we cannot guarantee if I send you over email a picture of a banknote and say, hey, this is a very unique item, so it has value. It doesn't work because the person don't know if you didn't copy 1,000 times and send the same banknote to someone else. So this problem we call double spend. And blockchain in simple form solves that problem. Double spend, again, is if I have something and at the same time I'm trying to give to someone A and someone B at the same time, so it's spending twice the same item, the same asset. So before blockchain, there was no solution for taking care of double spend. And the main innovation that came is Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of blockchain, found a way to solve the problem of double spend. How? It's interesting. So I've shown you the example in the past in a small village. So basically, it works a little bit like the small village where everyone records what everyone's property is in his own brain. But instead of having brains that records property, we have computers that are connected to each other. So basically what happens is when I want to make a transaction, when I have a token, anything of value, and I want to transfer to Rajesh, for example, so what actually happens is my computer will say, Shaban has a token, he wants to transfer to Rajesh, and all other computer on the network will have a copy of that ledger of what I own, and they will see the transaction, and they will eventually approve the transaction. So if I already spent my Bitcoin in that case, or my token, the network will say, no, you already spent it, so we refuse to include that transaction. So it's a peer-to-peer computers, so there is no third parties, and it's really a connection between computers and ledger. And it is secure. How is it secure? It is secure because if someone wants to hack the system, he would try to change the ledger. So for example, if he has only one Bitcoin, he will try to change his book, his computer, a fake book, and he will put 1,000 instead of 1, so he will be instantly rich, and the system will go down. But since there is thousands of computers that are connected together, if one of the computer is malicious, then it will be rejected by the rest of the network. So it's a consensus-based system. In this way, we solved the double spend problem. And with this double spend problem, we could create payment system. We could create token things that can be transferred just like cash to some other people. And the first implementation of that is Bitcoin. That was the first blockchain. And since then, there is a lot of others coins that appear that wanted to be other tokens, other blockchain, other ledger for payment. And also, if we look at games, since several years, Game Credits created a blockchain for payment in-game. So basically, it's a different blockchain, different token that was intended to be payment for games. So this is roughly, so I didn't went technical on how blockchain works, but then I'll give a few times for question if there's any on the problem that blockchain solves actually. Did you have any question about it? Yes? Yes. 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 So there is actually no one really knows why a Bitcoin is valuable and what will be the exact value of a Bitcoin. This is my personal take on it. So basically it's based on supply and demand. So the supply of those currency, like Bitcoin, are fixed. So Bitcoin have 21 million total that would be ever in circulation. So as more people need Bitcoin, as more people want Bitcoin, the unitary value will climb. So it's a network effect. The more user there are, the more one unit will be valuable. If we look at gold, for example, gold is a material. It's a very expensive material because it's rare. It's not the best material because plastic, for example, it's a much better material because you can do much more things with plastic. But gold is there because it's scarce and rare. And for me, the true value of Bitcoins comes from the fact that what's the use of Bitcoin? Okay, with gold, you can do jewels. With Bitcoin, you cannot necessarily make jewels. So for me, the value of Bitcoin comes from the fact that Bitcoin allows you to transfer item of value currency across the globe in an instant way, in a more efficient and quick way than any other. So when you do a Bitcoin transaction, and we're going to discuss this a little bit after, you have to pay a fee. So it's a network fee. The fee is optional. So I choose the fee that I want to pay in Bitcoin. And the higher I put my fee, the more active will be the miners, the computer that validates the transaction to put my transaction in the ledger. So basically, the value of a Bitcoin is the ability to write in this immutable ledger. And company, like gaming company, like my company, we need Bitcoin because we need to pay this transaction fee when we sell game items for Bitcoin. I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, any other before I go to the next part? Okay, let's go. So I talked about this going the reverse side on the road. So as many people see Bitcoin and blockchain in general as a mean of payment. I think it's much more than that. So it's not only about payment, it's about transfer of value over internet. So you can use Bitcoin for remittance, sending money in foreign country in a very quick way. For example, we pay some of our suppliers with Bitcoin that work in Japan. So it's cheaper and quicker than a bank transfer. But that's not all. True ownership. The Bitcoin or the currency that you have that sits in your wallet is really yours, and there is no third party in the middle. So it's really an asset that you, just like cash, just you control. If we apply this to game, we could create game assets, game token, that act like a currency. Meaning, when I purchase a game item, I will have it in my wallet. It will just not be a currency, but it will be a game item. And this game item will have the same property as any cryptocurrency. So meaning I will be free to transact it immediately to anyone without a third party in the middle. So we built our value proposition on that. So creating a wallet where I could hold different game items. And we connected these game items from the wallet to the game. So basically you download the game, and then you said to the game, this is my wallet address. Blockchain is an open protocol. So as I said, all the computers are on the network. Anyone can join. So every transaction are open and visible. So anyone can query any wallet to see what is it inside. We don't necessarily know who owns the wallet, but we can see which wallet owns what. So you can connect your game to your wallet. So the game will look at what you have in your wallet, and it will activate the characters, the items that you have on your wallet. Then, if you make a transaction, if you send your card to Rajesh, then you don't own it anymore, and the game won't let you use it anymore. So this way, we really have ownership, true ownership of the game items. They're not stored on our server. They are really stored on the blockchain. So for that, beyond this vision, we did a crowdfunding, what is called these days ICO, meaning we wanted to finance this vision. So what we did is we created our game currency called BitCrystal. And we said we will issue 1 million of this currency, 100 million units of this currency. Then we said we'll keep 30% for us as a company. The rest will go on sale. And all unsold inventory of that game currency will be burned, meaning will be destroyed. So then people during the crowdfunding phase, they bought this currency. And why did they bought this currency? It's because we said, with this currency, you'll be able to purchase anything that is available in our game. So if we make the parallel, I'll say, if you hold 100% of all the currency, it means that you can purchase everything in the game, and the other people will not be able to purchase anything because you are the sole owner of the game. Of course, that's not what happened. The currency spread against many people. And as the games get successful, there's more demand for BitCrystal because there's more demand for game items. As such, since the currency has been issued and locked, so there will be no more than 100 million, the unit value of the currency, just like Bitcoin, increased as the game has success. So we raised 300,000 US dollar for during the crowdfunding, really pitching the vision, pitching the fact that you also benefit as the game grows. And the community, people, they're tied up with the project because if they own a part of that currency, they will tell their friend to download the game because if the game grows, they also benefit. So it is really giving the power to the user to co-own, to be also stakeholder of the project they like, the project they make. So in this graph, I show you a little bit the value increase of BitCrystal. The value of BitCrystal grows as the game and the whole project takes buzz and so on. And we are about 20 times up from the initial value. So someone who bought $1 of that currency today has 20. So not to say for the one who bought for 10K. And why this value is growing? Because one, the game is growing, the community is growing, and second is because we burn. We said to our user, each time someone buys a card or an item from us, we will receive our currency that we created, BitCrystal, and we will destroy half of what we receive. So in a sense, it's a bit of a revenue share that we offer to the user, but we couldn't pay each user and say, okay, this is your revenue share for legal reason and also for practical reason. So what we do is we reduce the supply of the total currency. By reducing the supply, then it becomes rarer and the unit value grows. So to do that, I'll give you a little technology overview of the different blockchain. What are our choice? What are other possibilities of blockchain? And here I retain 3 different blockchain that I think make a lot of sense for what we're doing as games on blockchain. So the first one is Counterparty. So Counterparty is a layer on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And what happens with Counterparty is when you create a dragon, when you create a sword for your game, what you do basically is you take a very small fraction of Bitcoin, like $0.001 value of a Bitcoin, and you say this represents a dragon or this represents a sword. So when you transact that dragon, if I want to send that dragon to Rajesh, for example, so what I'll do is I'll transfer 0.0001 value of Bitcoin plus the metadata saying this is a dragon. So this is how Counterparty works, and it's based on Bitcoin technology. So it's a layer on top of Bitcoin that adds metadata that we can use for game. The advantage of Counterparty is it's simple to use. By simple to use is it's very easy to create a wallet. It's very easy to issue a token. You just have to click on the interface. You have to pay the fee, the transaction fee that you have to do. But it's very simple and straightforward. Counterparty does one thing good, is creating and tracking tokens. Not much more. There is one very important and good thing for games, and that's the base of our business model, is what we call decentralized exchange. So decentralized exchange allow people to put bet order on the market for different assets. So for example, if I want to trade a sword, I will put a price in BitCrystal, for example, and I'll put that information on blockchain, and then if someone wants to take the deal, he will also write the transaction on the blockchain, and the two items will be exchanged, and there is no one in the middle. So even us, even a bank or a third party. So decentralized exchange is natively available in Counterparty, and that was also one of our choice why we chose Counterparty is because we have this exchange, and we can from day one give the possibility to player to trade their item, and that's important in the use case. The second one that is very, very popular these days is Ethereum. So Ethereum is not on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's a separate blockchain. So today it's the second currency in terms of value just after Bitcoin. Ethereum is, I will say, contrary of simple to use, it's advanced. So Ethereum holds a lot of promise technically. You can do what we call smart contract, meaning you can not just only issue a currency and send a token over, you can program logic into the blockchain. What kind of logic? For example, it could be a revenue sharing deal. So you could write a contract of revenue sharing directly on blockchain saying, okay, the publisher, when someone sends an item, the publisher takes 20%, the developer 70%, and it's self-enforced, and there is no way to cheat on that contract, and the money will directly goes to the game developer and the publisher in an instant manner. No need to paperwork, a lot of things, calculate, whatever, instant. So smart contracts are very powerful and has a lot of potential, and that they are really, really interesting. And this is the reason why most of the projects on blockchain use Ethereum. The reason why we're not using Ethereum yet is there is no native decentralized exchange like I explain it to you with Counterparty. But with the contract, you could create a logic for a decentralized exchange, and there are some initiatives that try to do that, but nothing is really mature as for today. But if you have the technical capacity and really want to push things over, and I think it will happen in coming year, the smart contract can allow that. The third example is Waves. This is smaller, so it's not a major currency, but it's really based on his own blockchain, and it's also simple to use. But it has his own currency, so basically you have to adhere to their network and their potential. But the tools they're offering are pretty similar to what Counterparty offer is simplicity. And they also have a native decentralized exchange, and that's a very good point. So why we're not using Wave yet is simple, because we wanted the user to have the simplest experience as possible, and getting Bitcoin is already a bit hard for certain people. Just the steps that you have to take until you have your Bitcoin. Ethereum, it's a little bit harder, but it's okay because now it's a major currency. But Waves, it's even harder because it's a more niche currency. So this is the overview of the technology. Oh yes, and a very important point that I need to mention is the transaction fees. I talked about the transaction fees. The problem we are facing, the challenge we're facing is on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's now so popular that the size of the block, meaning I will say the page of the ledger that is stored on computer, is too big, and there's too many transactions, and they are filling the block, and there is not enough space for transaction. It means delays. It means that you will have to wait for your transaction to settle. And you can tackle that by increasing the fee. Basically, there is a fee market. So by increasing the fee, you guarantee that your transaction will be available as soon as possible, meaning next block. And this fee, actually, as for today, is about a $5, and meaning that to send a card, an asset, a game item, you will have to pay $5 each time, and that's too expensive. And everyone agrees that, and people, they don't agree on how we will scale, and that's the Bitcoin problem, because there is no central authority, and some people want to scale like this, others want to scale like that, and in the end, the solution is simple to scale, but it's politic, they just cannot understand each other, so that's why we have to pay high fees. Ethereum has now works the same, so you have to pay transaction fee when you're sending, but they have less transaction, I will say, as for now. It can change, but for now it's very cheap with Ethereum, and it's also very fast. But Ethereum, we are thinking and moving on Ethereum, but also a possibility is that maybe Ethereum will face this problem a little bit after Bitcoin. So you can never be sure. And also Ethereum, transaction fees. But Ethereum has it's a younger project. It's a little bit more, so far I'll say, centralized. So there is the Ethereum Foundation. Basically, they take decision, and it's the less political clash, because usually people just follow what the foundation recommends, and when they make choices, people tend to follow them. Other overview of the landscape. So other games that use the model of, I will say, 100 million burn, meaning issuing 100 million of their currency and then burning the unsold currency. There are other games that follow that model. I'll give you a few here. I mean, it's almost all of them. Beyond the Void, last year, they raised $300,000 US, and they use Ethereum technology. Augmenters will help them as well. They raised 1 million by crowdfunding, by selling their currency. Age of Rust, 400,000 recently, was last summer. And the latest one, where I'm advisor and we're helping a bit, is Lord Mancer. Their crowdfunding started 3 days ago. They already have 170,000 US dollar, and it's the beginning, so it's ongoing. There is another project that will come soon, is Scara. They will also use the same model. So on our end, we work on a specific blockchain gaming wallet. So now the wallets are very technical, they are very finance-oriented, I'll say token-oriented. So what we built is a wallet that is more user-friendly, a wallet where you see your asset as really cards with image, but has the exact same property of a wallet, a blockchain wallet. So on that wallet, you can see a card, you can send a card to someone. Really like the way you would send some cryptocurrency. Instead, you send a card. Then there is a market inside. I told you about the DEX, decentralized exchange. So on that wallet, you can also see the cards that you have. You can see the cards that you don't have in the game, and you can see buy and sell offers. So here, for example, I can see sellers, the price, buyers. So this guy is selling for 31 bits WCN, which is a currency, and this one is buying this card for 2. So I can also match an order directly, or I can put a custom offer on the market. In Book of Forbes, we have Spells of Genesis, who is our title, but we have also a different series of other games, and some are joining and will continue to join. There is a big benefit of having a game on blockchain. One is true ownership, I've told you about already. True ownership, the fact that you can trade without someone restricting you. But also cross-game collaboration. So assets are free, assets are open, so any game can connect to the wallet and can reuse a token or an asset coming from another game. So here we made a collaboration, for example, with Sarutobi. Sarutobi, they use a card, one of our rarest card, called Satoshi card here, and they can activate a specific mode in their own game. So this way they kind of attracting some of our players who own that card to their game. So that's a good thing for them. And for us it's a good thing as well, because it gives even more value to the asset that we are selling ourselves. The other example is Takara. Takara is a geocaching game like Pokemon Go, where you can place token on the map. So any counterparty compatible token. So anyone who can create a token and put it on the map. So I can, for example, place game cards, or I can place anything that I want on the map. We're using this sometimes for marketing. So we are taking some of BitCrystal, our currency, and we put it in some places, and people go and collect, and they get excited. The last advantage of the blockchain, so I mentioned true ownership, cross-game collaboration, and also I will say the limited edition and the guarantee of item scarcity, I'll say. It's the fact that we can issue a limited edition of a card, for example, and we say there is 200, no more. And no one can change that. Even us, we cannot change that rule. So if you buy one of this 1/200, you have the guarantee that there will be no more of that token created. Thus, it makes it valuable because it's a guaranteed limited series. So it creates scarcity. Yeah, so last part, if you want to experience blockchain in gaming, I invite you to own your assets, own your destiny. It's really a new paradigm. My bet is that in 5 years, no one will accept to buy something digital where he don't has the ownership, because it's so much valuable if you hold something. If you buy something physical, it's an investment. If you remember of playing card games that we play where we were young, or anything physical, you buy it, but you still hold them after years, even if you don't play, and they still have a value. Maybe someone wants to play again, so maybe your kids, maybe someone will buy them from you. So really, when you purchase an asset on blockchain, it really stays yours. If you buy a music on iTunes, for example, versus a music CD, on iTunes, if you die or if they stop their service, your thing disappears. It's not yours. The song is not yours. The CD is not yours. If you buy in a shop, it's really yours. You can use it forever. Same goes with blockchain digital assets. So you can try Spells of Genesis. So it's available on iOS and Android. That's a good start. Also, the wallet is called Book of Forbes. It's on Android only. We're going to have a web version that will be available on Apple very soon. And the field of game on blockchain, I mentioned a few games, but there is a lot happening. And really now there is a momentum, so I encourage you to get more information because there is a momentum. The project that fundraised there, it's pretty easy compared to Kickstarter to create buzz because it's so young and there is a lot of people who like blockchain, they're fans of blockchain, but there is not a lot of content addressing that. So there is really a momentum. So yes, or you can contact me. It's my Twitter. I'm not much on Twitter, so also on Spells of Genesis you'll get more insight of what we're doing every day. Or you can send me an email. So, do you have any questions? The guy with the blue T-shirt. Okay. Okay, wait, I'll answer question by question, otherwise I'll get lost. So your first question was about proof of concept. There is other companies working on proof of concept. So on our case, it's not, it depends on what you define as proof of concept, but on our case, we have real customer, real player, they pay, they buy cards, and they play in game. So it's more than a proof of concept. It's a platform. We're still building on it, but it's out on the market, and we have real users. I know there is a lot of company, big publisher that are working on projects. Some are crowdfunding. No one is out there yet. And what we're trying to do is what we're doing is we're creating a head start. So we're releasing on the market, we're testing. At the same time, we're building other tool, and we're releasing one by one as the time goes. And the more we release, the more advantage then we get. Your second question was transaction time. So that's not the fee, but the time. About the time, so there is two different things. There is the transaction, if you take the credit card, and the settlement. So when you pay with credit card, the acceptance, the transaction is instant, but the settlement, the time where the money arrives in real in the bank account, is much longer than that and can take weeks, even months. So there is two ways. So if your game needs speed, you could have an off-chain validation confirmation saying, okay, this guy initiated a transaction from A to B. We unlock the bonus directly for the player B, even if the transaction didn't settle on chain yet, but we expect that it will settle sometime in the future. So you could have, if the game works with the blockchain, you could faster. You can do an instant validation, even if the settlement is not there. you need time for the transaction when you transact outside of the game. If you're using wallet to wallet, for example, but you're not using the game. And in that case, that's not too much of a big deal, because if it's an in-game event, yes, you want it fast. But if it's something that has a lot of value, like, for example, our card, Satoshi card, is traded for $4,000 on the market. And when you do such a purchase, it's not to play instantly in the game, but it's more like to have a collection. So the more you wait on the blockchain, the more security you have. So if you don't need high security for like it's a bonus unlock on a game, that's okay to wait no confirmation. But really, if you want to do resell and you want to be sure before you resell a card or you promise to someone, it's less of a problem of waiting more time for confirmation. When we tailored the model, it was not very easy to take that decision because there was no other thing that happened, and we decided 50% because the main idea was by crowdfunding the users are the publishers, and usually the publisher, a good cut for a publisher is 50%. And usually when you have a publisher that takes 50%, then he will be active trying to make money, so to sell and so on. So in our case, we decided 50% because we said, okay, we want a viral thing where people tell their friends and their user are the publisher. They are the owner and they are the publisher. The number can really vary depending on the decision, but all other games, they also took this 50% as a base. It's now like common in these ICOs, but yeah, it's hard to give a number. In our sense, it's not bad for us as well if the burn rate is high, because since we own also a good bunch of BitCrystal, if we burn more, we give more value to the rest of the BitCrystal, so we're also more valuing our own stash. So it's a trade-off, and we wanted to have something that feels sexy for people who buys it and also feels rewarding for everyone. Okay, so this is a typical blockchain problem. That's not really, I mean, that's not our problem, I will say, as a game developer, but that's a question for people who create those protocols. And so mining require power, that's true, and our game asset are not mined. So that doesn't take into account, but there are some projects that want to address that problem. That's an ecological problem, and that's really a problem for the security of integrity of blockchain versus power consumption. And Ethereum, for example, they want to move into what we called proof of stake instead of proof of work. So proof of stake is, instead of having miner working to validate the transaction, they just it's just a vote between people who have the more currency. So the people who have the more stake, more unit of that currency, they will put a vote, more power in the vote. Because if they try to cheat the system, they have the highest stake, and they might, the currency might lose all its value, so they're better play with the system rather than against the system. So this is a thing that, for example, Ethereum is looking at, and also Waves is using proof of stake. And I didn't mention, but Waves transaction are much cheaper and faster even than Ethereum because of proof of stake. So this is something that is work in progress, proof of stake. The perspective, my perspective is it's a bit untested, so we cannot know how this will be stable long term. But this is really a question for the specialist of blockchain, the one who takes the decision on really how they want to scale the blockchain. But on our case, for gaming, what is important is to understand what's the vision of the chain we are following, and is it good for the product and ultimately for our player to follow those choices. So proof of stake, I will say that's my perspective. So far it's a bit risky and too much untested, but it could be one of the solution of the scaling issue and the power consumption. Yes. Fix the value. Yeah, very good question. I'll summarize quickly for those who maybe didn't hear. The question is, Bitcoin is volatile, our game currency is volatile, and the game item could be volatile. So how do we manage this volatility, whether it's revenue for us, whether it's value for the user? How do they deal with this, all these changes? That's a very important question. So most of the currency, as you mentioned it, are pegged to Bitcoin. So we value a currency from the value compared to Bitcoin. For our game currency, BitCrystal, it's the same. They're also pegged to the value of Bitcoin. They're sometimes linked. So when Bitcoin goes up, our currency goes up, and sometimes it's separate. What we notice with experience is now there tends to the value of our currency tend to be more pegged to the reality, and I will say to the US dollar. So there is a volatility with BitCrystal, but generally when Bitcoin goes up, the value, the correlation of Bitcrystal price goes down. So it keeps then a little bit of the same dollar value price. And the same when Bitcoin goes down, the value of Bitcrystal versus Bitcoin goes up, trying to keep a certain stability. From a player perspective and a company perspective, there is really two ways. First, the ICO way. So the ICO way is basically you sell your currency to people, and they expect that the value of the currency goes up. So they appreciate this increase in price. There's really two markets. So either we do that, we need crowdfunding, then we create a currency that is linked and then volatile to the success of the product, or and then we have to tailor the price of the cards to trying to push the value of the currency up. And then those people are happy because the currency is evolving. From a player perspective, someone who don't own any Bitcrystal or don't really care, he needs, of course, stability and have no risk on that. So the approach with Spells of Genesis basically is we have two revenue streams. We have the in-app purchases, as usual, and we have blockchain sales. And blockchain sales, we're selling different cards on blockchain. And they are more targeted to people, the crypto enthusiasts. And the price politic is more tailored for that kind of people. But it's totally possible to, for a game, to, if they don't want to do a crowdfunding, to have a stable, try to stabilize their currency. But it's just not our case because it's not what our community, blockchainer community wants. From a company perspective, so far it has been good to very good for us, this price volatility, because what happens is we don't make money when someone buys a blockchain card because they give us the currency that we already sold in the past. So when we do money is when we exchange the currency, and usually we tend to exchange the currency when the price is good. So if we sell a card for $1 value at day D, for example, then we receive Bitcrystal, and then we will sell this Bitcrystal on the market 10 days or 20 days after, and then we'll make maybe double or double the value. So from a company perspective, that's a risk. That's a risk, but depends on how much you have to hold, because there is always fluctuation. So you can always wait. I mean, if you have enough time in your lifeline. Yes, yeah, true. So far the market was bullish, and we tend to think internally that we're facing a bubble, but this is really related to not to us in general, but there's too much craze out of ICOs. There's a project that got financed. They receive millions, and they have just an idea, not a proven team, and that's clearly overvaluated. On our side, since the beginning, to mitigate that problem, we tried since the beginning to give value for the player and the user and create real sales out of our currency. So it's not a currency for speculation. We try not to have that politic, but we try to always sell, or people have a use of the currency to really buy a game item or a certain advantage. So people hold the currency not for speculation, but there's really a need. So when the correction will happen, we expect the bit crystal not to move as much as other projects, because comparing to many other projects, Bitcrystal are really used for a game benefit. A game benefit and a game use. And I would advise anyone who wants to make an ICO or wants to issue their own cryptocurrency to think about value for the end user and what kind of value for the end user we can create. And if this value is not just blockchain for blockchain, but value the end user will need or continue to need that value when market goes crazy down, then they will continue to need your currency, and it will create a stability for people off. So, but that's a general problem in game, I will say. The only thing we cannot change is the asset supply on the blockchain, or we cannot take it off the blockchain. But we could eventually deactivate the asset, and of course people will be very unhappy about that. That would be a suicidal decision. But we could say, okay, we sold this to $100,000, and we just decide to deactivate it. So people will be unhappy, but it's possible.